all need a little help sometime, but oftentimes we'll rush to situations and a person may be going through something and they look good on the outside, but on the inside, you may have Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or Mrs. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde showing up. And next thing you know, you're caught up and you're wrapped up and you're tangled up into an entrapment, an emotional roller coaster. I remember that song, Emotional Roller Coaster. Loving you ain't never easy. Loving you. Yeah, stay with me. I'll teach you some things.
Okay.
All right. So I saw this article. That's what you need to know. I saw this article on MadameNoire.com. And it dealt with this woman who was dating this person. And we know that therapy, they have various stages of therapy. Yes. Okay. Yes. And so, first of all, people need to understand what therapy is. And so that's why I have Gerald, who's going to enlighten us. What is therapy, first of all, Gerald?
Okay. Psychotherapy, which is psychological therapy. So a lot of times, if I meet someone and I say I'm a therapist, the first thing they ask about is, oh, are you a physical therapist? And then I have to say no, psychotherapy. And then they're like, okay, mental health therapy. Yes. So psychotherapy is mental health therapy to address any regular adjustment issues that a person might be experiencing, because sometimes we go through life and can experience things, getting a new job, losing a job, separation, divorce, these different things that can affect you emotionally and behaviorally. And so a lot of times people come into therapy to see me to address those things, which are more psychosocial factors. And then the behavioral issues, parents bringing kids in because their kid is oppositional defiant disordered or conduct disorder. They're having some behavioral problems.
Mr. Walker, there's a lot of static coming through and I'm trying to figure out if it's this microphone or what. Okay. So,
I'm hearing it.
Yeah, it's a lot. Kind of like when you get in a relationship with somebody and they start having issues and you're like, I can't hear you. I don't understand you because I got a lot of stuff going on inside of my head. But we will continue here live on Fly Nubian Queen, as well as those of you that are listening. Understand that we'll get the static taken care of. Okay, I think that's it. It got better. A little bit. No? Okay. So good morning, Dot. Good morning. I think that is Priscilla. Hi, everybody there on Fly Nubian Queen. I'm Dolores Jones, your host.
Hey,
and I'm your comeback coach, honey. Part of what I do, too, is help you bounce back better, not bitter through life experiences and bad decisions. So the question is it a bad decision to date somebody while they are in therapy? And my guest today is Gerald Payne. He's a psychotherapist, and he was explaining to us the difference between
I think the mic
psychotherapy and physical therapy. And so when people come to him, they'll go, okay, what kind of therapist are you? And so you were explaining to us, therapy is, you go in and talk to someone.
Addressing the emotional, behavioral, the psychiatric issues that a person might be experiencing.
Right. Okay. So I saw this article in MadameNoire.com, and it talks about a woman.
Is she an advice columnist?
She was a person in therapy, and she actually pulled up some facts. And so I have you here to confirm these things. And then, I'm a master's level social worker, so I can relate and I understand some of the lingo. I also have been in therapy personally. Is therapy a bad thing? Because there's such a taboo.
Therapy is a good thing.
And what is it?
Not going to therapy is a bad thing.
So a lot of people envision you go see a therapist, you lay on a couch, a sofa, and you spill all your guts. You all take us into our dark places, and then we get up and we don't know what's going on. Now mommy, come back. How we just see things in the movies. You're sucking your thumb. And what is therapy really, and what does it look like?
Okay, the way therapy looks, and it's not accurately depicted in movies. First thing, usually, like 80-90% of the time, but basically a person comes in for their initial assessment and they present what it is that they are struggling with. And so the therapist does an assessment, to see, what else is maybe going on with the person, if there's any psychiatric things going on like depression or bipolar disorder, all these different things that a person could be experiencing psychiatrically. So does an assessment and then set goals. The person sets goals like, this is why I am here. This is what I'm wanting to work on.
Okay.
I'm struggling in my relationship with my spouse. I'm wanting to work on that. I'm wanting to, improve my communication with my spouse. Different things. And so we outline what their goals are and start working in that direction. So as the client comes in and presents, the specifics of what it is they're struggling with, the therapist works with them on problem solving, communication skill development, anger management, conflict resolution, whatever it is that is necessary in order to move them forward with reaching the goal that they have set, or the goals that they have set. So therapy is a problem-solving process.
I like that. You have a problem and you're in the process of solving your problem.
Yes.
So part of the question,
getting an outside perspective.
Right, an outside perspective that is unbiased.
Unbiased and clinical.
I love that.
That's the difference.
Here's some of the questions that came up in the article when the young woman found herself in a relationship with someone who was in therapy. Firstly, she had a problem because he didn't come right out and tell her that he was in therapy. He waited 1.5 years to tell her that he was in therapy. And so she felt like he lied. Is that a problem? Yeah. I mean, you're dating 1.5 years. When should I know that you're in therapy?
Well, there's no set time that a person should know, because technically it was none of her business. So you have to think about that, because therapy is a private thing. Okay. Therapists are expected to respect people's confidentiality, and clients have a right to keep their own confidentiality and disclose when they're in therapy when they want to, because there's not necessarily you have to tell a person you're in therapy. It's not like, if she was a registered sex offender or something, she would need to tell him that, but she's going to get help.
Borderline personality. You have people who are schizophrenic. You have all types of mental illnesses.
Okay. It can be important to disclose to a person that you are schizophrenic, for example, because they need to know that as far as moving forward in a relationship with you. And then their question should be, well, are you in therapy for this? Are you trying to get some help with this? I can see how she feels like he lied by omission, by withholding the information that he was in therapy. And it is a long time. Generally, if a relationship is moving forward, that sort of thing is just going to come up. Like, how was your day today? Oh, it was a good day. I went to work, and after work, I went and saw my therapist and, had a good session. And then after that, I went to the grocery store. The fact that so much time went by really is a sign of there being a problem in the relationship. It's totally separate from the fact that the person was going to therapy. Like, what else does she not know?
Okay. Well, after 1.5 years, that's a long time personally.
Yeah.
Now, if a person says to you, I'm going through some things, I'm working through some things. Now, that is an indication that you may be working with someone to get through those things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess one of the first things we need to know when we're starting to even get involved with someone in therapy is you shouldn't be the cause of the therapy.
Well, yeah, that's true. But before getting to that, you have to take a look at the fact that he does not feel comfortable being open with her about things, because therapy is also a personal experience. Like, people get down to the heart and soul of things in therapy. So the fact that he didn't feel comfortable telling her that, unless he is in therapy for something that he is trying to hide. For example, if he is doing sex offender treatment or something that would, make her turn and walk away from the relationship, you know, or if he is in therapy. There's certain things that people are addressing in therapy that they do not want people to know. So the question is, did he withhold it because of what he's working on in therapy, or did he withhold it because of the relationship with her?
Okay.
Now, as far as a person being the cause of the therapy, I'm not necessarily. Why did she say that? That sounds a little ridiculous.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, she couldn't help but wonder if it was her fault, number one. And then she wanted to know, do I make him happy? Happy enough? Is this going to change things between us? When a person says, I'm going through something, a life change, or, you know, it's like if a person says, I'm going through cancer, you know, I have cancer. And well, you know, it's not your fault if the person has cancer. But if a person says, hey, I'm in therapy right now. Unfortunately, sometimes as women, we like to take ownership, and we need to understand that we don't have to own everything that's happening in somebody's life.
Right. And I wonder if that played a role in him not telling her, because when she found out, she immediately went to, am I the cause of the therapy, or is he in therapy because of me? So her insecurities began to take a forefront to whatever reason he actually was in therapy. It became about her. And so for that reason, he's probably like, I don't even want to tell her that I'm in therapy because it's going to become about her. She's going to think that it's her fault. And am I in therapy because of her? Is she, you know, getting on my nerves? Is there a problem in the relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Really, if it was about her, if he was in therapy for what, a year and a half, if it was about her, the therapist would have long ago asked him to invite her to come in for therapy. If it was relational issues, partner relational issues, the therapist would have said, hey, why don't you invite your significant other in so that we can discuss these relationship issues.
Okay. So number one, when it comes to whether or not you should date someone who is in therapy, I think what the conclusion is, one is it could be a yes or it could be a no. But the biggest point is understand that his therapy is private. And so he's not entitled. Is that what you're saying? He's not entitled.
He's not required to tell her he's in therapy. It's odd that he didn't tell her. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not odd that he didn't tell her, but there is also the stigma in mental health. And sometimes people get caught up in the stigma and just the embarrassment of, hey, I'm attending therapy and I don't want to share it. I don't want her to think that I am weak or that I'm, you know, explosive and might hurt, whatever he thinks that she might think that is negative in connection to him going to therapy. Like there's a ton of different reasons why he didn't tell her this.
Well, think about this. So, okay, it's private and I can respect privacy. And ladies, you know, even if we're in therapy, which is not a bad thing, therapy is not a bad thing. It's not a taboo. But think about this. At least you should have some major details. For example, if the person is in therapy and they aren't supposed to be going to a certain place because it's a trigger, they shouldn't be around certain people. I mean, it's not that I want to be your mother, but at least I can understand, you know, and I'm aware of how the environment needs to be to support your healing.
Yes, now that is true. If a person is coming to therapy for an addiction, for example, let's say it's a substance addiction, you know, person is in recovery, in a relationship that is significant, it would be good for her to come in so that she can be made abreast of what his internal and external high-risk situations are for relapsing. You know, certain people, places, things that he should not be exposed to because they're going to increase the risk of him relapsing into whatever drug abuse, drug addiction that he is struggling with. At the same time, his perspective may be, well, I can tell her that myself. I don't need her to come up into my sessions because here's a reason why sometimes, a lot of times people do not want to invite their significant other in is because I have found this, they have talked to their therapist about some things that they're like, that's totally private. That has nothing to do with my relationship with her. I don't want her coming in here because I don't want anything private to come out. And so then the therapist has to reassure them, okay, listen, we're just going to talk about whatever you two bring up. I'm not going to start bringing up, your, issues with your mother that you're having transference and it's transferring on to your wife. I'm not going to do all that. We're going to focus on what you guys want to talk about. But then sometimes a client will be like, well, but if I bring my wife in here or husband, I don't want them asking you questions that are personal questions about me because I have spilled out all of everything to you.
Okay.
I need to be careful about who comes in here.
So it's kind of like that client therapist privilege. And you hold on to that. Even if a loved one comes in, you don't just start volunteering information that person has shared with you in private.
Right. And sometimes clients don't even want to take a chance. They don't know what their spouse or significant other is going to say. They don't want to take a chance on the session going in the direction that is really, really private for them, because people come into therapy and tell like their deepest, darkest secrets.
Yes. And I have a story for you. Okay. You're listening to Finally Free with me, Dolores Jones, the comeback coach. I am streaming live here on Fly Nubian Queens. Hello to all of my queens. Where are you all listening from? I see that you're enjoying this particular topic. Should you date someone while they are in therapy, or should you even date while you're in therapy? I mean, that's a twofold question there. My guest today is, like I said, the first thing in speech you don't do, but now I'm channeling.
I got a bad hum habit myself. Okay.
So my guest is Gerald Payne. He is a psychotherapist. So he's looking at more of the psychological aspects of things when it comes to therapy, not physical therapy. But I have learned, Gerald, that sometimes what's going on with you mentally can affect you physically. But I'm going to go back to a story, because you talked about therapy is private, ladies and gentlemen. And so it is not a requirement that that person comes off and tells you, just right up and says, look, I'm in therapy. It's because I was molested when I was 6. Those are very touchy, conversations. And for the person to even step out and say, I want to work on myself, they should be applauded for that. Another thing to keep in mind is when the person does decide to share something with you, it is imperative that you stop what you're doing and you listen. You don't go down a list with a whole lot of questions. It's not an interview. It's the fact the person is opening up and they don't want to be judged. And so at that point, they're saying, I can trust you with my feelings. I can trust you with my emotions. And so it doesn't, the last thing you want to do is say, oh, well, you should get over that. Well, that was a long time ago. Well, I would, this is not about compare and contrast. If this person is having a moment of clarity for you, and are you mature enough to not personalize it and to just listen? You don't have to be the mama. Sometimes they don't want you to make it all better. Sometimes they want you to listen. Now, I will say this: at one time I was in therapy.
Okay.
I was in marital counseling, or what you have it at the church and all that other stuff. Okay. Yes. And so I went in speaking to this particular woman in confidence. And so I was telling her about some of my concerns, but then there was a point where I said to her, hey, because he and I were already separated. And I said to her, I'm attracted to this guy. And so I started telling her about the guy.
That was not your husband.
He was not my husband. Okay. We were separated. So I was on the verge of divorce and all this other stuff.
Right.
But then how sometimes we're like, well, because sometimes in therapy, we want to know, do you want the marriage or do you not want the marriage? Are there distractions as to why you want out? Or, because if you're double-minded, you're not going to be stable. So either you want it or you don't. So anyway, from a woman-to-woman perspective, I'm telling her about this guy that I met and how I like him and how he treats me. And she's trying to, remind me that, marriage isn't about somebody doing nice things for you. It's about the person treating you nicely. And so she was like listening to me.
Okay.
Well,
this is Christian counseling.
This is Christian counseling.
Can be a little different than straight clinical counseling.
But the confidentiality is key, regardless.
Well, yes, regardless.
Okay. So what she didn't know is one day she went home to talk to her husband about her session with me.
Okay, that's a problem.
Okay. And she ended up butt dialing my husband.
Oh my God.
I know. So you know how your phone will butt dial somebody?
Oh.
Just think about this. So she butt dials my husband, who I am separated from, we live in different houses. And he hears the entire conversation that she is having with her husband.
You have got to be making this up.
No.
This is crazy.
This was crazy. So all of a sudden I get a knock on the door, and it's my estranged husband at the time. And he comes in and he's like, I'm getting ready to sue the church. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I mean, he was like overboard. And he was like, so I know that there's another guy that you like and that you've gone out with. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I'm like, no. So he had recorded the session. He recorded the conversation that this therapist was having with her husband about me.
You.
And so he started to play it.
Oh my God.
And sure enough, she was saying things like, well, like if she don't want him, then I mean, she need to go ahead and leave him alone. I mean, I don't even know why she's still coming to counseling. I mean, if she's done with him, then she's done with him. But if I was him, I mean, I wouldn't take care of a woman who wanted to know more, you know, who was involved with another man.
This is a circus.
This was ridiculous. And it put me in harm's way.
And if she would have been a licensed clinician, you'd have been able to sue her for malpractice.
Yes, but he
breach of confidentiality.
He wanted to sue. He wanted to sue the church.
Well,
and I told him, I said, calm down. Okay, calm down.
So he was more thinking about getting some money out of this than, hey, who's this man that you seen?
On some levels,
because even he heard the cash register on that situation.
Look, she don't want me. This is a violation of confidentiality. But one of the hardest things was I went to church with this particular therapist, and I knew her.
Was she an actual therapist though?
Now that's the thing.
She couldn't have been.
We have to be okay. We have to be careful when we start giving people in churches doctorates because you go to a certain university. And because the thing is when it comes out to professional counseling, yes, we are held to a certain standard and we are liable.
Yes.
Now, she apologized to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she did. And then she did.
She did. That's an understatement. An apology.
And part of the conflict is you're not really supposed to be friends with your therapist. So if you're in a church and you have a Christian therapist, and you've been friends with them, that's going to be muddy water. And so what I chose to do out of my love for her, because I knew her before she was being a church counselor.
Okay.
I looked up to her as a mother figure. Okay. And I went to her and she was so apologetic. She said, Dee, I am so sorry. And I'm like, yeah. You know, and I walked her through. I said, this could have happened. What if he would have came and shot me? What if he would have went off? I mean, what if, I don't know. And
bad things could have happened.
Right. But I chose to forgive her because I knew she was a human being. The other thing was the marriage was already finished. So I couldn't blame her for what was already happening in my marriage.
Well, but you had not chosen to share that information with him. She shared information with him that you may have never wanted him to know.
Well,
you have a right to
you
have a right to your privacy and to withhold that information.
Yes.
Did he get any money out of this?
No, because I said
he didn't sue.
No, I said this is ridiculous.
Because really, you were the one in the position to sue because it was your confidentiality that was breached.
Yes.
So he's probably trying to figure out, okay, how can we get our student loans paid off of this situation?
Well, it would be
somebody needs to sue, but it would have been your student loans getting paid.
Well, that's why. Listen to this: if you do decide to go into therapy, you want to definitely talk to someone who has malpractice insurance.
Well, their therapists are required to have
right, because sometimes therapists can get it wrong. Gerald,
all healthcare professionals.
Have you ever got it wrong?
I'm sure. Yes. I mean, because I'm not perfect. So you can get it wrong.
But
yes.
You didn't like butt dial somebody's wife or husband.
No. I haven't done that. But I'm saying that you can see a person and do an assessment and give a diagnosis. And then later they can present additional symptomatology that lets you know, okay, that diagnosis wasn't totally accurate. I need to change it.
Okay. So we found out that if you decide to date someone who's in therapy, understand there are certain things you need to keep in mind. Number one, it's private. the person is entitled to privacy.
Yes.
And therapy is supposed to be confidential. It really is.
Absolutely.
But sometimes things come out, as in my case, and then you have to deal with that on an individual basis.
Okay, I want to say I've
Go
never
ahead.
heard of that happening.
Well,
That situation you were in, I've been a therapist for 20 years. Like, that's just a total freak show and a circus. This, because I don't want your listeners to think that something
no.
as absolutely ridiculous and stupid as that happens. I've never heard of that happening.
Well, that's some people's greatest fear, is that I go in and I tell you everything that's going on with me, and then it gets out. So the other thing I think that we need to think about when we're going through therapy, or we are considering dating someone in therapy, or like in this woman's case, she was in a relationship with someone and he came out and said, oh, by the way, we're a year and a half into this relationship and I've been seeing a therapist. So she felt betrayed. But you have to remember, therapy has nothing to do with you unless you're the cause of the therapy. Okay. Other thing to think about, therapy will not work if the person is hurting you while they're in therapy. Hit that thing. Like if he's saying hurtful things to you and lashing out at you, and then, well, we're in therapy. I mean, do you even deal with that? Because some of that stuff is very painful.
What exactly do you mean?
Okay.
Like he's in therapy, for anger management, and he's being emotionally and psychologically abusive to her.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. It's a good thing he's in therapy, though. Like, she should have been more curious about why he was in therapy than upset that he was in therapy. Being in therapy is not a problem. Not being in therapy oftentimes can be a problem. But a person's getting help. So you mad at him for getting help? You need to be like, okay, what you working on?
Well, how about this?
Not that he has to tell her, but if she's getting abused,
right,
she should be like, okay, well, thank God you in therapy, but you've been in therapy for a year and a half. You've been abusing me for the past year and a half. Something might not be working. You might need to take another look at how well you're doing in therapy. But by all means, yes, therapy is a good idea because you're abusive.
Well, think about this, because sometimes when you're married to someone who's in therapy, you feel more obligated to stick and stay. But in this case, you're dating someone. You're not married to them. And it could be very fresh. It could be very, very fresh.
A year and a half later,
well, no, let's see.
The freshness is gone.
I remember being in a situation, and I don't think eventually the person told me they were on medication, but they didn't say they were in therapy. And we were just having a normal day, and out of nowhere, he was like, I adore you. And, women, we love to suck it in. We like to take all that up, okay, the woman's worth. Mm-hmm. But out of a sudden, out of nowhere, he says, do you know, if you hurt me, Dolores, I will blank you up. I will F you up. Okay.
Some of the crazy came out. And you should have been like, oh, I hope you're in therapy.
Well, no, I should have said, oh, show me the door. Should I have said, show me the door? Or should I have said, are you in
therapy? Both. You can take your exit. I don't think any person should be obligated to stay with someone just because they're in therapy and getting help for their problems. Because they're getting help for themselves. They're not getting help for you. Okay. And so you are entitled to live a life where you are not abused. You shouldn't have to put your safety in jeopardy because, well, at least he's getting therapy. I'm going to wait for him to get better. No, you need to take care of you.
So should you get in therapy? Maybe that's a good idea. If you're in a relationship with someone in therapy, how about you sign up and do individual therapy as well?
No, because she might not need it.
No, I think all of us need therapy sometimes. We all need growth. We all have stumbling blocks in our way.
I think everybody can benefit from therapy sometimes. I don't know necessarily that everyone needs therapy. They could benefit. It's kind of like when we did the show and we were talking about grief and loss issues, and I talked about me struggling with the loss of my mother. Mm-hmm. I would have benefited from therapy at that time. I made it through it without therapy. Yeah. So it's questionable as to whether or not I needed it,
right,
or not.
That's a good point.
Because I ended up fine.
But
on my own.
Yeah, but sometimes if you've never been in therapy, because I think we all carry something we all have something, right?
Yes.
But some of us may have already done the work, like you said, and maybe they don't need it. Maybe they need a better understanding. And so maybe they should go to a session.
It's about a person's coping skills and the level of coping skills that a person exhibits. Mm-hmm. You can have one person who her husband leaves her. She's got 5 kids. She's been out of the workforce for 20 years. If she is resilient, she might get out there, beat the pavement, find a job, take care of herself, take care of her babies, and be fine. You can have another woman who might not be as resilient, and she may need the support of a therapist to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed with this situation. Please help me map out a plan. And so the therapist assists with that piece. Mapping out a plan. Okay, let's take a look at what are you interested in? What do you like to do? Did you go to college? Did you get a degree? You haven't worked in your field. Let's discuss how you can get back into your field, and just mapping out those measurable objectives, those measurable steps towards her goal of supporting her family. So either approach is fine. It just depends on how resilient a person is and how fast they want progress. Because some people can be very resilient and not go to therapy, and they're going to end up resolving their issue. Therapy just would have helped them get it resolved a lot faster.
Okay. You made me think of something that the same relationship, the same marriage I was in, where we went to a Christian counselor.
Yes.
And then, she butt dialed my ex.
Which typically is not a clinical.
So then I went to a clinical therapist.
All right. Okay. Somebody would answering to a licensing board.
Yes, she did. And this was the most bizarre experience.
Okay.
Okay. So we're there one day, and I'm just going to tell on myself, because sometimes when you're in therapy, you hit buttons and tender spots. And so I was tired. You know how like when a woman is fed up in the relationship, or you feel like you're being lied to, or you feel like you're being manipulated and all this other stuff. So we were having a very heated session. Now, mind you, we were still on the verge of divorce. But this is the social worker in me. I felt like, well, everybody can deserve to be better. So how about we go to therapy and work out some of our issues so you'll be better for someone else and I'll be better for someone else. Okay. So that was my whole thought process.
Makes sense.
So we get into the therapy session, and he starts saying something, Gerald. And before I knew it, I lost it.
Okay.
I grabbed my shoe. I took my heel off.
Okay.
And I was ready to hit him with the heel in therapy.
Which, yeah.
And she said, oh, Dolores. I said, no, I'm so sick of this. So I had that heel.
Yeah.
And he's looking like, see what I told you? And I'm thinking, but you don't know what he did to me, right?
Okay.
Okay. So it was a trigger, because it was like he was lying. He was lying, and I was done, right? So this is what she said to me. Dolores. And I said, what? Because remember, I have a master's in social work at this time. I ain't talking about I hadn't been through the university.
Right.
And can you imagine this heel in my hand? She said, Dolores, calm down. I said, I'm just tired of this. So then she says to me, Dolores, let's talk about that little girl in you. I said, what? She says, let's talk about your mom being dead. Let's talk about that little girl in you. And I'm like, what in D-H-E double hockey stick does this have to do with me having this shoe in my hand about to hit my husband?
Why did she go there?
I don't know.
Did you ask her?
No, I just looked at her.
People have to ask their therapist, where are we going right now?
Where are we going with this? So then she said, I want you to go home. And I want you to, what'd she say? I want you to write a letter to your mom. Or she gave me an assignment. Like, I want you to bring a picture in. We need to get down to Dee Dee, that girl that's scarred. And I thought, we're going to get to her. But first, I want to get to him, because I'm tired of this sugar honey iced tea. Right. So then what I realized is he knew her. He recommended her. So now it gets bizarre.
He had seen her before?
Yes.
Okay. So she really was his therapist.
Thank you. So I'm like, why is she coming at me?
Right.
Okay. So she was biased.
Because that's her client.
Yes. And I didn't know that. So then what happens is I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this again. Because this is some bull.
Right. You had 2 bad experiences.
Yes. No. So then this is what did it for me. So we go back again. because I didn't want to quit.
She must have saw. I wish you would have asked her. People think they can't ask therapist questions. Ask therapist questions. Like, what is the link between this heel about to go into his head and my mother?
What they have to do with it?
You must see a link. I'm not doing any homework assignments until you tell me how you connected.
You tell me why I should put this stiletto down.
Homicidal moment to grief and loss.
I just wanted to go upside his head.
He ended up dead.
No, I wouldn't hurt him like that.
Okay, how big a heel we talking?
It stiletto sharp on the end.
Okay, he was gonna die.
I didn't have the platform. I didn't have the platform on like I did when I went to court with my son's father. And I came out of court, and the homie ghost said, "Take your heel off, Dolores Jones, and cock it back, and then just go for his temple." Now,
who said that?
The homie ghost.
Oh, homie ghost.
Yeah,
okay, I was gonna say,
but I wasn't.
What Holy Ghost was that?
I wasn't listening to the Holy Spirit.
Okay, because the Holy Spirit don't tell you to do.
No, but
not that.
I was not in the presence of the Lord in the moment.
Okay.
You know how you have the angel over here and you got the enemy.
The homie ghost on the other side.
Yeah, so the homie ghost said, he said, take that platform.
And he was from deep in the hood.
Yeah, so I took it off and I cocked it back. And he was coming out of the courtroom, going in, in the hallway, and he was talking to his attorney. And I let it go and it hit him on the shoulder. And I missed my target. So the homie ghost said, "You got another shoe. Take the left one off."
Right.
So I took the left one off and I cocked that one back. And I threw it too. And I missed him. But then I looked up and the deputies were coming towards me.
And the homie goes, he done ran off at this point. He's like, whoa, Popo's coming. Popo's coming.
So the Popos were coming for me in the hallway. Okay. The police were coming for the comeback coach at the time.
Yes.
Okay. And so I saw this man, this sheriff, and he was a black father. And he was the sheriff. And when he got to me, I said, "I'm so tired." And I just laid my head in his chest and I started crying. Oh. And he said, "I got her, y'all. I got her." Because it was like, I guess they was going to take me down. They was going to take me down.
But they didn't need to do all that.
Well, so he said, "Baby girl."
Sometimes you just need to hug a criminal. You don't need to
Well, I got to be a criminal. You know what? After the show, I have a shoe for you, Gerald Payne.
So you just gotta hug a criminal. So you gotta take him down to the ground.
So he did.
Okay. Back to the show. Where we at?
So he did tell me, "I want you to calm down, sweetheart, and do me a favor." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Would you put your shoes back on?" So with my sophisticated shoe throwing self, I put my shoes back on, and everybody was looking at me. And at the time, I was on the radio, so I was working for Magic 107.3.
Oh.
And when we got into his office, I said, "I'm not really crazy." He said, "I know you're not crazy." And he says, "I listened to you on the radio."
Oh, wow.
He said the judge had mercy on you. So he told me to calm you down and send you home.
Oh, this is wonderful.
It was wonderful. Now, back to therapy, because I needed to be in therapy myself.
Well,
so ladies, listen, this is a point that I want to make, because you need to know if you should date while that person is in therapy. You need to really think about if you should be dating when you're in therapy.
I don't see why we are linking dating and therapy. Like,
or in a relationship with somebody in therapy.
It's not like going to classes to learn how to be a sharpshooter. It's therapy. Like, I would, if I was single,
okay,
and I was still dating, and I was dating some woman, and she told me she was in therapy, I'd be like, "Oh, good, therapy, yes, hey." Even if I'm not, and this is not because I'm a therapist, even if I wasn't a therapist, I'm like, okay, you're going and getting some help with something.
You're bettering yourself.
You're getting some, even if the person's just getting therapy because they're like, "Look, I want to switch careers, but I'm not sure I know what I want to do. I just know that I hate my current profession, and I'm just seeing a therapist to help me identify what my inner skills, traits, interests, abilities, all these different things are," because sometimes people go to therapy for regular things like that. Okay. I'd be like, yes, go to therapy. Hey.
But the one thing to think about when you're dealing with someone who is in therapy, they may be they will not be emotionally accessible.
Why not?
Because sometimes people are caught up. I mean,
therapy makes people more emotionally accessible.
Right. But if the person is too emotional and they block you because they don't want to deal with any other emotions,
they need to work harder in therapy.
I gotta take that off because
the static is really bad.
Is with me. Okay.
Here's what I'm saying. Therapy is to help a person in that position to do better at getting in touch with their emotions and expressing their thoughts and feelings to their significant others. They shouldn't be emotionally unavailable as a result of therapy.
Well, think about this though. Sometimes when you're working on yourself, it may be difficult to open up emotionally because where you are, it's a very hard place. You know, if your mom just died, or if you lost your kids, or if you're in the middle of a divorce, sometimes people just need to take a break, don't you think?
Well, yes, I think that in a person opens up in their time. I can be working with a client because I see, in addition to seeing, females, single females in therapy, married females, I also see a lot of single men and married men in therapy. And so sometimes they'll come in and they will get in touch with some really deep rooted emotional issues.
Exactly.
And sometimes we will trace it all the way back to childhood and how certain things in childhood is affecting their interactions with their wife in the present.
Right.
Okay. Because a history of neglect and abandonment in childhood can result in some insecurities in adulthood, which can affect a marital relationship. And so I may talk to them about openly expressing some things to their spouse,
right?
But they have to do it in their time. I'm just preparing them for when they're ready to do it. And sometimes they say, well, can I bring her in here and we discuss these things? Well, by all means, of course you can. And then other times they're like, I'm going to talk to her about it. And I'm going to come back and let you know how it goes. Okay, fine.
Right.
But people shouldn't be forced. Therapy is not supposed to be so directive, because there is directive therapy. Okay. But it shouldn't be so directive to the point that people are being forced to do things that they're not ready to do, unless it is a situation where there's a danger to themselves or others. That's different.
Okay. So if the person they can't handle, if they're acting out and they're violent and all that, and you still know they're in therapy, you need to just step away.
Well, because it might not be safe for you.
Right.
Yes.
The other thing is, are your needs being met? Because sometimes when people are working on themselves, they can only give you so much. And so there's no reason to stay in a situation where the person can't meet your needs because they're taking care of their needs.
Well, yes, because sometimes relationships can be a distraction from the work that a person is needing to do on themselves.
Yes.
And the work that they're needing to do on themselves, those issues are destroying the relationship anyway, and doing a lot of damage to the relationship and to the other person. And so, yes, in those instances, a person needs to step back, and work on them. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, men are watching as well. Queens, how y'all doing?
Hey, Queens.
I have been talking about, should you date someone who's in therapy? Or maybe the question should be also, should you date while you're in therapy? Because that's a twofold thing. I already told y'all what happened when I was in therapy one time. I took my stiletto off. I was ready to go at it. Okay. But God is a healer. He's a deliverer.
When it comes to questions of should you date while you're in therapy, it really does depend on what you're in therapy for and what you're working on.
Right.
And so if I have a client who is struggling severely with drug addiction, they have tried many substances, have multiple addictions to many substances. If they if they come in and they're like, okay, I just met this new woman and I'm ready to pursue this relationship with her, then yes, I can't tell them what to do, but I can say, okay, we're focusing on getting you clean and sober.
Yeah.
So you can enter into this relationship with her, but you need to be aware that it's quite possible that it is not going to last,
Yeah.
because you're still waking up in places you don't even know how you got there, in beds with people that you don't even know. So this really might not be the best time to start a new relationship. You need to sort some things out. And what I present to them is, it's a good idea to be the best person that you can be,
Right.
so that you can present your best self
To someone else.
to someone else, as opposed to you walking into the relationship a hot mess. You are all jacked up and talking about, I'm here for your love.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I just woke up from like a crack or meth binge, I don't even know how I got where I woke up. But I'm here for your love. No, that's not fair to the other person.
Right. So you need to know where you're at in your road to recovery.
Yes.
It's one thing to jump from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship. And the main relationship is you need to get in touch with the relationship you have with yourself.
Love yourself.
Love yourself.
And take care of you.
That used to bother me when I would meet other women who were more mature than I. And they would say things like, you need to love yourself, Dolores. You need to learn to love yourself. You don't need somebody right now. You need to be in a relationship
Good advice.
by yourself.